Imagine you're James Gunn, and you've just been handed the keys to DC Studios. Your mission? Take a character that's been stumbling for over a decade, restart an entire cinematic universe. And oh, by the way, you also have to help save a company drowning in $37 billion of debt. No pressure, right? James Gunn's Superman isn't just fighting to save the world, he's fighting to save Warner Brothers from corporate collapse. And the strategies he's using to make Superman hopeful, again, might be the exact same decisions that destroy everything. Welcome to the highest stakes creative gamble in Hollywood history, where every artistic choice carries billion-dollar consequences, and where the most dangerous enemy isn't Lex Luthor, it's the balance sheet. Let's start with what happened before Gunn even stepped foot in the director's chair. The DC Extended Universe wasn't just a creative disappointment, it was a financial disaster wrapped in superhero costumes. Films like Batman v Superman and Justice League didn't just get bad reviews, they actively eroded audience trust. Batman v Superman opened strong but suffered a massive 69% second weekend drop, proving that even brand recognition couldn't save poor word of mouth. The theatrical cut of Justice League became such a critical and commercial disappointment that it effectively ended any hope for the interconnected universe Zack Snyder had envisioned. But here's where it gets really interesting. The DCEU's problems weren't just about tone or character interpretation. They were about fundamental misjudgments of what audiences expected from icons like Superman and Batman. Snyder's approach focused on what he called Superman the God, rather than the relatable Clark Kent that fans actually connected with. The result? A Superman who felt distant, conflicted, and, most damaging of all, unkind. When your core character embodies the opposite of hope, you've already lost the war. The financial reality was brutal. By 2023, the DCEU hadn't had a genuinely successful release since 2019, excluding standalone Elseworlds projects like the Batman and Joker. Each failure compounded the last, creating a toxic cycle where even moderate successes felt like disappointments. Warner Brothers found itself in an impossible position. They owned some of the most valuable intellectual property in entertainment, but couldn't figure out how to make it profitable. Enter James Gunn and Peter Safran with their comprehensive blueprint for a brand new DC universe. But this wasn't just about creative vision. This was corporate crisis management disguised as filmmaking. David Zaslav had essentially bet the company's entertainment future on Gunn's ability to make audiences care about Superman again. The pressure wasn't just creative, it was existential. Now, Gunn's creative strategy seems brilliant on paper. He's pivoting 180 degrees away from the brooding, conflicted Superman of the Snyder era. Instead, he's promising a character defined by innate goodness, someone who's more grounded than godlike and deeply human in his values. The film isn't an origin story, it drops us into Superman's early days in Metropolis, focusing on Clark Kent's relatability through his work as a reporter and his internal moral struggles. This sounds like exactly what fans have been asking for. The visual design supports this shift completely. Production designer Beth Mickle deliberately chose to brighten everything up and really lighten it up and make it hopeful. Instead of the heavy, dark tones that dominated previous films, this Superman exists in a world of lots of blues, reds, golds, oranges and greens. Even the technology choices support the vision. Cinematographer Henry Braham used Leica lenses specifically for their dreamlike quality, creating an almost nostalgic feel that echoes Richard Donner's classic films. The narrative techniques are sophisticated too. Rather than making Superman invincible, and therefore boring, Gunn surrounds him with morally complex characters like Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, and even members of the Authority. These relationships are designed to test Superman's boundaries, not just physically, but ideologically. The goal is to make his goodness feel earned, not inherited. But here's where Gunn's David versus Goliath story gets complicated. Every single one of these creative decisions carries massive financial implications that could backfire spectacularly. Quick pause. More than 90% of you guys watching haven't subscribed to the channel. I would love for you to hit that subscribe button. It really gives me a lot of motivation to keep making such deep dives. Now let's get back to the Superman. Let's talk about those financial pressures because they're shaping every creative decision in ways that might not be obvious. The production budget alone is $225 million, with marketing estimates ranging from $150 to $200 million more. That means Warner Bros. Discovery is spending over $400 million on a single film, money they borrowed against a company already carrying $37 billion in debt. The math is brutal. Industry insiders suggest the film needs to gross over $500 million worldwide just to break even, but public perception demands closer to $700 million for it to be considered a hit. This creates a terrifying gap where a technically profitable film could still be perceived as a failure, potentially triggering the same panic mode that Warner Bros. Has fallen into after every previous disappointment. And here's where Gunn's hopeful, family-friendly approach might actually be the problem. Early social media reactions to the main trailer revealed something troubling. A significant segment of fans complained that Superman looked weak and got beaten up much more than expected. Comments like, "Why is Superman looking so vulnerable?" and "What kind of whiny trailer is this?" suggest that Gunn's empathetic approach might be clashing with audience expectations shaped by grittier, more violent superhero content. This isn't just about fan preferences, it's about market positioning in a landscape dominated by shows like The Boys and Invincible. These deconstructionist takes on superhero mythology have redefined audience expectations for superhero violence, realism, and moral complexity. They've made earnest heroism feel almost rebellious, but they've also trained audiences to expect a certain level of cynicism and brutality. Gunn is betting $400 million that audiences are ready for a return to classic heroic archetypes. But what if they're not? The competitive landscape makes this even more dangerous. Superman releases in July, directly competing with Marvel's The Fantastic Four and Jurassic World Rebirth. This isn't just about beating other movies, it's about proving that DC can compete with Marvel on Marvel's own terms, while being fundamentally different in tone and approach. Here's where the corporate David versus Goliath story reaches its peak tension. Warner Bros. Has a documented history of extremely reactionary responses to underperforming films. When Batman v Superman disappointed, the studio went into full-blown panic mode. When Justice League failed, it effectively killed the DCEU. If Superman underperforms, even if it's profitable, the same pattern could repeat, potentially delaying or cancelling future DC Universe projects before they even begin production. But Gunn isn't just fighting external pressures, he's also fighting against the very corporate structure that hired him. UB's credit rating was downgraded to junk status, creating what analysts call a liquidity vacuum in their bond market. The company's linear television division is hemorrhaging money, making theatrical success not just important, but essential for overall corporate survival. This creates an impossible creative environment. Every decision Gunn makes, from casting choices to marketing strategy, exists under the shadow of corporate desperation. When he emphasizes Superman's vulnerability and emotional struggles, he's not just making a creative choice, he's risking the financial future of everyone involved. When he commits to practical effects and thoughtful character development instead of spectacle-driven action, he's betting that audiences will reward artistic integrity over blockbuster bombast. The marketing strategy reveals just how high these stakes have become. Warner Bros. Has launched what they're calling a supersized social-first marketing strategy, projecting the Superman S-Shield onto global landmarks and partnering with Fortnite to capture younger demographics. They're explicitly pushing the Superman marketing towards younger audiences to overcome the DCEU's previous failure to attract family audiences. But this strategy contains its own risks. By targeting younger viewers, they're potentially alienating the core comic book audience that's already expressing skepticism about Superman's perceived weakness. The merchandise is selling well. Products featuring the new S-Shield have experienced overwhelming demand. But merchandise success doesn't always translate to box office performance, especially when the actual film content might surprise audiences expecting traditional Superman power fantasy. Here's the most dangerous part of Gunn's approach. He's trying to solve systemic problems with individual creativity. The DCEU failed because of rushed universe building, inconsistent tone, and fundamental misunderstanding of character appeal. But these weren't just creative failures, they were symptoms of corporate impatience and financial pressure. Now Gunn is facing those same pressures while trying to deliver the exact opposite result. The film industry has changed dramatically since the DCEU began. Superhero fatigue is real, streaming has altered audience expectations, and global markets demand different storytelling approaches. Gunn's strategy of returning to earnest heroism might be exactly what the genre needs, but it's also the highest risk approach possible when your company's survival depends on massive box office success. Industry projections vary wildly, with some analysts suggesting opening weekend numbers in the mid-range compared to previous Superman films, while others predict potentially record-breaking performance. But these projections themselves reveal the uncertainty surrounding the project. When industry experts can't agree on basic performance expectations, it suggests that Gunn is attempting something genuinely unprecedented and therefore genuinely dangerous. The international market adds another layer of complexity. Superman has always been a distinctly American character, but global box office now represents the majority of revenue for most blockbusters. Gunn's emphasis on moral clarity and basic human kindness might resonate differently across cultural boundaries, especially in markets where superhero content is expected to deliver pure spectacle rather than moral philosophy. What makes this situation truly unique is that success and failure aren't just about this one film. If Superman succeeds, it validates Gunn's entire approach and potentially launches a decade of DCU content. If it fails, it doesn't just kill future Superman films, it potentially destroys audience confidence in DC's ability to compete with Marvel, delays every planned DCU project, and forces Warner Bros. Discovery to reconsider their entire intellectual property strategy. The deeper question is whether authentic storytelling can overcome systemic corporate problems. Gunn is betting that audiences will respond to genuine emotion and moral clarity. But he's making that bet within a system designed to maximize profit rather than artistic impact. Every focus group note, every marketing decision, every release date choice exists within the pressure cooker of corporate survival. So here's what we're really watching on July 11th, 2025. The test of whether creative integrity can coexist with corporate desperation. James Gunn has positioned himself as the defender of Superman's core values, hope, kindness, moral clarity, while simultaneously trying to save a company that embodies the opposite of those values. He's trying to make Superman relatable while operating under stakes that make him seem almost godlike in his responsibility for DC's future. The tragic irony is that Superman's greatest power, inspiring people to be better, might be exactly what Warner Bros. Needs. But it's also the hardest thing to monetize. You can't focus group moral clarity. You can't market test authentic emotion. You can't guarantee that hope will sell tickets in a world that's grown comfortable with cynicism. If Gunn succeeds, he'll have proven that earnest heroism can still move audiences and generate massive profits. If he fails, he'll have demonstrated that modern entertainment has moved beyond the possibility of genuine optimism. Either way, Superman won't just be fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. He'll be fighting for the survival of the very idea that popular entertainment can make people better rather than just keeping them distracted. The real question isn't whether Superman can save the world. It's whether James Gunn can save Superman from the corporate forces that hired him to fix problems they might be incapable of solving. And that's a battle even the Man of Steel might not be able to win. So, have you watched the movie yet? Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. Please do consider subscribing to the channel if you found value in this. Oh, and YouTube thinks you will like this video. Do watch it before you leave.